In September of 1857, more than 100 men, women, and children were killed in southern Utah while traveling west through a quiet mountain valley known as Mountain Meadows. They were members of the Baker-Fancher Emigrant Party, bound for California. What happened there would become the deadliest act of violence against a civilian wagon train in American Western history, and one of the most painful episodes in Latter-day Saint history. The emigrants entered Utah during a moment of extreme tension. Federal troops were moving toward the territory, rumors of invasion were spreading, and southern Utah settlements were isolated and fearful. Church-published histories acknowledged that communication was slow, anxiety was high, and loyalty to leadership was heavily emphasized. But the massacre itself did not come from Washington, and it did not come from the U.S. Army. It unfolded locally. According to the Church History Department's published research, the Emigrant Party camped at Mountain Meadows for several days in early September 1857. Relations with local settlers were strained but not violent. On September 7th, the wagon train was attacked by a group that included Paiute participants and Mormon militiamen disguised to appear native. The emigrants formed defensive positions and held out for several days. During this time, local leaders debated what to do next. Messages were sent north seeking guidance, but no direct orders to kill the emigrants have ever been found in church or territorial records. On September 11th, a decision was made that would define the tragedy. Under a false promise of protection, the emigrants were persuaded to surrender their weapons and march from their encampment under militia escort. Once separated into groups, they were systematically killed. Only young children, generally under the age of 7, were spared. Church-published histories, including Saints, Volume 2, and the Church's official Gospel Topics essay on Mountain Meadows, are explicit on several points. Local Mormon leaders and militiamen carried out the killings. The massacre was not authorized by the Church as an institution. Brigham Young did not order the attack. However, the Church also acknowledges that a culture of obedience, fear of outsiders, and wartime rhetoric created conditions in which such an atrocity became possible. In the years that followed, silence dominated. Survivors were scattered. Property from the emigrants was absorbed into local communities and later returned through federal efforts. Investigations stalled for decades. Eventually, one man, John D. Lee, a local leader and militia officer, was tried, convicted, and executed in 1877. Church records confirm that Lee was excommunicated prior to his execution. Whether he acted alone or as part of a broader failure of leadership remains a central question historians continue to examine. The Church has since taken steps toward transparency and reconciliation. In 1999, Church leaders participated in the dedication of a memorial at Mountain Meadows. In 2017, a senior apostle publicly acknowledged the massacre as a terrible and inexcusable tragedy, and affirmed that it was carried out by members of the Church acting against gospel principles. These statements are part of the Church's official historical record. And yet, even with these acknowledgments, the hardest questions remain unresolved. Not about what happened, but about responsibility. Who should be held accountable when violence emerges from fear, obedience, and fractured authority? How do institutions confront crimes committed by members acting in the institution's shadow, but not by its command? The Mountain Meadows massacre forces history to slow down. It resists easy villains and simple explanations. It asks us to examine how power, loyalty, and fear can converge, and what happens when moral clarity is lost in moments of crisis. History doesn't only ask what happened, it asks who took responsibility and who didn't. If you're here for LDS history told through primary sources, church records, and careful context, not headlines or hit pieces, follow along. And in the comments, share your thoughts. When violence is carried out locally, but shaped by broader leadership culture, where does accountability truly lie?